To comply with a House subpoena regarding allegations surrounding 9 Biden family members and up to $10 million in payments made to the Biden family by foreign businesses and foreign entities. I want to get back to this story right now because this got overshadowed by everything else yesterday. So a press conference was held, James Comer, at 9 a.m. America missed most of this story because the rest of the media spent the day following the George Santos stuff. So what did we learn yesterday? Well, essentially, 9 Biden family members were making millions of dollars, ramping up in late 2017, the end of Biden's second term as vice president. Biden was in Kyiv, capital of Ukraine, 5 days before his term ended. He was actually in Switzerland a couple days later meeting with the president of China just before he left office. Biden been in office for 50 years. And according to Congresswoman Nancy Mace, right there in the Navy dress, it was time for Joe Biden basically to get his. It was time for him to get paid. For more on all this, let's welcome back in Joe Pinion and John Bachman. Great to have you both on set. Joe, I want to read you this quote from Nancy Mace. She said, and this is a quote, Joe Biden's political career was winding down at the time, late 2017, and this was one of his last chances to cash in on the Biden family name. What people forget is Joe Biden was done. He wasn't going to run for office in 2020. I think that was a rumor, but I think people said, like they did with John Kerry in 2008, you know what? His time is past. He's too old. Let's cash in.
Look, I think we don't know a lot of things about the president, but the things that we know about the son are undeniable. We know for a fact that his business partner, Bob Alinsky, has said that the 10% for the big guy was, in fact, the vice president. We know for a fact that there were 14 visits to the White House to meet with senior aides to the vice president by Hunter Biden's business partner, 80 visits to the White House by a broader array of business associates to meet with aides. And we have emails that say that the reason they needed those visits was because the people they were trying to procure business from, the Chinese government, the Ukrainian government, required that FaceTime as a demonstration of goodwill to release the bonds. We spent a lot of time talking about exactly what that chain of events looks like. We had people like Adam Schiff educate the American people. It's called a quid pro quo, right? So at this point, we don't know a lot about how complicit the president is. I have my own speculation. But we most assuredly know that this should be an investigation that should be coming to an end. There should be indictments. And I think when the history books are written, if you follow this train of evidence, Joe Biden will probably go down as one of the most corrupt presidents in the modern history of the presidency.
I'm with you. And it's not how complicit was Joe Biden. I think if it's got wings and feathers and it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck here. I don't think Hunter Biden's got the cachet to go over there and woo all of these companies and these foreign entities to funnel money through LLCs to the tune of $10 million.
Also to that point,
I don't think Hunter's that good a businessman.
It was under his purview, right? That's the most important thing, right? That the same way that Kamala Harris was responsible for the border, that disaster, now AI, here comes Skynet, right? At that particular point in time, the person responsible for America's foreign policy, a cachet on energy, was Joseph Robinette Biden.
Yeah, but according to Joe Biden, he never talked business with his son Hunter. I mean, you're a parent. Can you imagine just not talking business with your kids when they're older? But James Comer, John, he had a lot to say.
He did.
And mentioned that the Bidens had multiple bank accounts. They only have access to a few. Here's what he had to say on all of the Bidens and who benefited from this.
Joe Biden's son, Joe Biden's brother, Joe Biden's brother's wife, Hunter Biden's girlfriend or Beau Biden's widow, however you wanted to write that, Hunter Biden's ex-wife, Hunter Biden's current wife, and 3 children of the president's son and the president's brother. So we're talking about a grandchild. That's odd. Most people that work hard every day's grandchild doesn't get a wire from a foreign national or anything like that.
My kids aren't getting wires from foreign nationals.
No, it sounds to me, so all the Bidens get money unless your name is Navy Roberts, Hunter Biden's 4-year-old daughter that he's never met.
The question is, what were they getting paid for? I mean, this is the question, a very simple question that the White House should be able to answer, Joe Biden should be able to answer, Hunter Biden should be able to answer. What were you doing for this money? That's a simple question. The other thing, too, going back to what you were saying about the Santos prosecution, record speed, right, for George Santos to be investigated and then charged by the federal government. Hunter Biden's investigation has taken years. You have whistleblowers coming out saying they're getting stonewalled by the DOJ and the FBI. You have this new information from Comer saying we're not getting these documents we requested from the FBI, and we're basically told by the FBI, sit down and be quiet. It's not your responsibility. What James Comer is alleging here, as much as it's hard to think about the idea of a Kamala Harris presidency, you know, if the Justice Department isn't going to prosecute this, there is a, you know, judicial process that can play out in the Congress.
So just to wrap up the Comer stuff, and we'll dive into this in a little bit, but it seemed yesterday like there was a lot of smoke, but maybe not the smoking gun that we were all looking for. And I watched this thing, and then I watched the 5 reporter questions at the end. Comer never said criminal. Right. He said not ethical. Big difference there.
Huge
What
difference.
happens next?
You know, I think that's the question is, you know, the DOJ historically has been reluctant to prosecute a sitting president. I don't think this is going anywhere. The bigger question, you know, you can see the tie directly. The question, I think this is why Hunter Biden's involvement is so important in getting to the bottom of that. He is a private citizen. The White House reminds you he's a private citizen. We know he illegally possessed a firearm. Any one of us who did that with the gun issue alone would have served jail time, or at least would have suffered some sort of severe consequence for doing so. Right. Why is Hunter Biden skating on all these issuers?
I think, again, to that point, the former Attorney General of the state of New York, Eliot Spitzer, famously said, never nod, never wink when you can nod, never nod when you can, or wink, and also never write an email because there's death.
Right,
So,
and always wear socks. And always wear socks.
So all the emails that have been written there by Hunter Biden should be all the evidence you need to have the indictments, to have the further investigation. And all the reports say they're sitting on.
We'll see where it goes from there. You want to talk a little George Santos?
Yeah, I wanted, we talked about this. I saw you put it on Twitter, but I was thinking the same thing, John. So when Comer had his press conference yesterday at 9 a.m., right around the same time, George Santos was arrested. Is that coincidental, you think?
If it is coincidental, you know, I'm not really sitting here right now. I don't know. There are no coincidences in life. And I think what this shows us is that the left, the Justice Department has been so politicized. They are willing to use it in ways I think Republicans need to be willing to do the same exact thing. Having this arrest and then letting George Santos out of jail magically right at a time. You know he's going to walk up to the cameras. The press loves this guy, even though they may hate his conduct. They love having this guy, and you know, it's a media spectacle.
We'll play the soundbite.
One out of 435 people. This guy has very little power, but somehow he sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
There are no coincidences. You know what yesterday was on Capitol Hill? It was picture day. Right, and so the 218th Congress will be missing exactly one member of Congress from picture, George Anthony DeVolver Santos, whatever you want to call him. So too cute by half by those people down in D.C. trying to make sure that we could be both distracted from the real business happening yesterday, and also to make sure that they can have the last laugh.
So we'll leave it there. And I asked Comer on Monday. I said, you know, you're telegraphing to the Democrats exactly when you're holding this press conference. Why not hold it right now? He said, listen, we've got a big day Tuesday with the debt ceiling at the White House. Also, we're all at home. We're not in the district. And I felt like saying, just hold the press conference in Kentucky.
Just
like,
release
do
the
it now.
Right.
Do it now, and don't give the Democrats the opportunity to do what we saw yesterday. MSNBC, CNN, we're making a big deal out of a guy who's been in Congress for 4 months. All right, we'll pick this back up in just a little bit. Enjoyed the conversation, Joe, John. Thank you. Let's welcome Alex back in. She's got to look at what we're watching for on this Thursday. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Well, President Biden's daily press briefing is a bit unique today, with Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas joining. The president later delivers remarks touting his administration's conservation efforts. And at our nation's capital, if you like committee hearings, well, you're in luck. There are way too many to even mention right here, but it's highlighted by Senate Appropriations testimony from Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and General Mark Milley. And coming up in just under an hour, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy will lay a wreath at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. But coming up right here on Wake Up America is the Biden family between Russia and Ukraine, as officials from the two countries say they have no knowledge of any such operation. Newsmax foreign correspondent Alex Salvi is live at the Vatican with the Pope's efforts to bring an end to the hostilities. Good morning, Alex.
Alex, Pope Francis maintains that a secret mission is underway to rescue children in harm's way and bring an end to the conflict more broadly. Secretary Cardinal Parolin confirming the active mission despite representatives for Russia and Ukraine saying they were unaware of any efforts, with Parolin responding by saying that both sides have been informed. Now, the Pope is unable to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin, but is keeping dialogue open through Russia's ambassador to the Holy See, who he met with just this morning, actually, as well as other intermediaries. Now, the Pope this past weekend greeting an envoy from the Russian Orthodox Church at the Vatican with its leader, Patriarch Kirill, an outspoken ally of Russian President Putin. Now, both Kirill and Putin are refusing to meet with the pontiff at the moment, but Pope Francis, on his way home from Hungary, insisting that all lines of communication will remain open until peace is achieved.
I believe that peace is always made by opening channels. You can never achieve peace by closing them. I invite everyone to open relationships, channels of friendship, and this is not easy. The same speech that I made in general, I made with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and I make it everywhere.
Now, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is known to be the European leader with one of the friendliest relationships with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Orban claims that he and Pope Francis are the only leaders truly working for peace amid the hostilities. Now, the pontiff has an easier time communicating with Ukraine than he does Russia, but he says ultimately it really doesn't matter. Pope Francis reaffirming that he plans to visit Kyiv, but only if he can also visit Moscow, saying that he wants to go to both places or neither. Alex?
Alex Salvi, thank you so much for that report. Really appreciate it. All right, now it's time to take a look at the latest business headlines. And for help with that, we're going to bring in a global business consultant, Hillary Fordwich, as well as accounting professor at Montclair State University, Dan Geltrude. Good morning to you both. Okay, so looking at those markets, they finished the day mixed. Now this morning, futures are slightly down ahead of the opening bell. Okay, so as you know, it's our go-to when it comes to searching online, even to the point of just kind of becoming a verb, just Google it. Now searching on Google is about to look slightly different. Hillary, tell us more about Google's new overhaul.
Yes, you're absolutely right there, Alex. Pleasure to be back with you and Daniel. A few things here. It's going to be an overhaul. What they're aiming to do is to make it more conversational. This is actually Google's attempt to catch up with what Microsoft has backed and funded, the ChatGPT. Now, few things. One must be really careful because while they're trying to make this more conversational, our audience must always remember that the responses that you receive are slanted. Just like when you Google anything, like you said, it's become a verb, you don't get a balanced, you get a biased response. So what's happening is this is happening even faster. I've tried Bard, which is their demo. Bard is faster, but again, it can be conversational, it's easy to use, and they're facilitating for young people who don't want to put in the energy and effort, or anybody who doesn't have the time, the energy and the effort, and what you're getting is a slanted response. You've got to be extremely careful in using it.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, I'm not a big fan of them incorporating this AI. Like you were saying, we've seen all the screenshots, people asking it a question, and the response, which way it's slanted. It happens almost every single time. You have to be extremely cautious. Well, speaking of more overhauls, Elon Musk announced that Twitter users will have a few more direct messaging features to take advantage of. Dan, what is coming to Twitter?
I think what we see here with Twitter is their effort to try to really take over communication in every form. They are moving to voice and video chat. They're also going to have direct message encryption. These are big steps. And while you're communicating like you're talking on the phone, there's no phone number to trace to. So we're moving towards more communication and more private communication.
Which is a good thing. Elon even came out and said, even if I wanted to read the direct messages, I couldn't. That's how encrypted they are, so that's fantastic. Amazon is looking to cut back on their delivery costs, now giving customers the option to pick up their items. They're actually offering $10 to anyone who wants to just go pick it up instead of having it delivered. Hillary, tell us about, Amazon really getting rid of the perk that everyone loves about it, that free 2-day delivery right to their front door.
You're right, Alex, except for they're not totally giving it up. What they're doing is they're incentivizing people to go to either Whole Foods, Kohl's, or Amazon Fresh to pick it up. This is because what they did was they built out their fleet in terms of delivery, and that has actually increased their costs. And also, of course, there's a driver shortage, just like there is across the entire economy of the US, 11 million job openings. So they're trying to facilitate speed by those people who might want to save $10, and other people will still be able to have that option. So it's an option at the moment We just need to see where they're going, if this is going to change ultimately.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many people actually take advantage of that. So the April inflation numbers, they came out yesterday, showing inflation cooled more than expected. Dan, for those who may not have really even noticed, what prices have come down at the grocery store?
Right, so dairy prices are down, and fruits and vegetables, and your meat and fish. However, flour and poultry are up. But let's keep this in mind. Inflation had been running so high for so long, we're a bit tainted. So yes, prices are coming down, but they're still really high. It's all a matter of perspective. Inflation is still too high.
Yeah, it's completely relative. They're still much higher than they were. Let's talk about summer travel. So if you're looking to travel out of the country this summer, you better buckle up. The airfare has skyrocketed. Hillary, to you, what's behind this increase?
Number of things. One, of course, is the price of fuel, and that actually relates into, we can link these two stories, because I always wondered, why were eggs so expensive? There are 11 surcharges during the supply chain in terms of these green initiatives slapped on farmers and every single aspect, and also fuel being so expensive also with surcharges for the airlines. But last but not least, very importantly, during the Obama administration, when they pulled down funding for the military, they pulled down the funding for the pilots in the Air Force, and the pilots are the pipeline that feeds into pilots for commercial airlines. So what the airlines have found is fewer pilots, fewer flights. They've had to raise the prices actually to kind of temper demand. That's one of the factors.
And it raised a lot. I mean, if you want to go to Asia, it's up 62% than it was pre-pandemic. You want to go to Europe, up 36% just from last summer. I mean, it's not just a little bit, it is a lot. Hillary Fordwich, Dan Geltrude, thank you both for coming on this morning. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Rob, Allison.
It's 36% more to go to Europe this summer. Just another Joe Biden's America. Another example for you, voters. Let's go back to the southern border right now. Since Joe Biden took the oath of office, January 2021, there have been over 6 million illegal border crossings, and now Americans across the country are bracing for the end of Title 42 as thousands of migrants wait along the Mexican side of the border to cross today.
Joining us now is Wisconsin Congressman and member of the House Judiciary Committee, Scott Fitzgerald. Sir, thanks for joining us. So the GOP is set to vote on a border bill today. I was reading it. It looks like this will help secure the border. But President Biden says it gets to his desk, he's going to veto it. Why?
We're kind of alarmed that the White House is not actually kind of taking this more seriously. Over the last couple of days, we've had conversations specifically with members that represent border states where we're starting to hear real specific numbers of those that are expected to hit the border sometime today before midnight. Guatemala is probably the best example. The president there is saying 80,000 individuals will be hitting the U.S. border sometime today. They've tried to reach out not only to the White House, but members of Congress are trying to talk to Homeland Security, Border Patrol about it. And quite honestly, it's just it's not being taken seriously. It's a real concern at this point.
Congressman, we had Mark Morgan, used to run the Border Patrol, on with us earlier this morning. He said right now they're seeing on average 10,000 illegal crossings a day. That's the most the Border Patrol's ever seen. If you average that out over the course of a year, it's 3,650,000 illegal crossings in one calendar year. That's Joe Biden's America. Back to the bill. Do you have the votes?
They do. We right now look like we're going to the floor at 4 o'clock today. I'm expecting that there were some concerns about the e-notification that came out in the Rules Committee. It feels like leadership was able to kind of pull that together. So I'm fully expecting that the bill will hit the floor today at about 4 p.m.
The administration, I watch Karine Jean-Pierre's press conferences, and she continues to blame Republicans for this. The numbers don't lie, as Rob mentioned, how things have drastically changed. But why do they continue to blame Republicans when you even have a bill on the table now?
Right.
Yeah, Mayorkas yesterday. I mean, it was unbelievable to see him actually with a straight face continue to tell everyone that, listen, there's not only not a crisis here, but, the border is not open just because Title 42 is going away. I mean, you don't have to be a member of Congress to understand that certainly there is a message being sent globally to anyone who may want to come in and just claim asylum that this is the time to do it. And if you don't get under the wire, it's going to get more difficult again. The cartels, they're actually talking about it's going to cost more for an individual to work with the cartels to somehow gain their passage across the border. So it's a lot more formal, I think, than what many people understand. It's not just immigration in a form that people show up at the border, they go to the Border Patrol, they go wherever the lights are, quite honestly, and just kind of cross the border. I mean, this is organized. It's organized at a high level. And I think that's something that the administration they haven't acknowledged at this point.
Yeah, Congressman. And to your point about the cartels, they used to be a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Now, one estimate that came out earlier this week, $15 billion a year in profit. That's what these cartels are making. So once a Republican is back in the White House, whenever that happens, it's going to be that much more difficult to break these cartels up, similar to what we saw in the 70s and 1980s. Just about 15 seconds for a response.
Yeah, just the only other thing I would say is Homeland Security has seen an escalation again in the amount of fentanyl coming across the border. So that tells you right there that it's the cartels. This isn't just kind of an ad hoc group of people migrating to the border.
All right, Congressman, appreciate the update on the bill. They'll vote today at 4 p.m. We'll keep a close eye on that and continue to spotlight this story. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be with you guys.
With the Romanian national who was under investigation for and later convicted of corruption in Romania. 16 of the 17 payments to their associates' account that funneled the Biden's money occurred while Joe Biden was vice president.
All right, welcome back in. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer holding a press conference yesterday morning that got very little attention from the rest of the media yesterday because, the big George Santos news. He talked about the Hunter Biden investigation linking the president's son and 8 other Biden family members to business deals in Romania, China, and other places. Yeah,
for more, let's welcome in presidential historian Craig Shirley, constitutional attorney and Newsmax contributor Amir Benno, and former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz.
Great to have you all on this morning. Craig, I want to start with you. You're the historian. Yesterday, somebody even asked Comer during the question and answer portion of that press conference if he would compare this to Teapot Dome or Watergate. Is this Joe Biden's Watergate moment, or are we well past that now?
No, Rob, I think you're absolutely right. I think we're well past that. When Watergate took about 2 years to play out. Nixon started in the high 50s when the scandal first started, and he ended up in the low 20s. Joe Biden is starting at a base of 35%, and he can only go downward from here. This and all of his other problems accumulating. This is much worse than Watergate because it involves a conspiracy among a family, a real crime family. And the other thing is that Democrats also conspired to cover up records about the Biden. So it involves the entire Democratic Party and the Biden family. So Nixon was just about a handful of campaign aides and a handful of White House aides. This is far worse.
Fred, as a former CIA analyst, can you walk us through how the CIA actively assisted the publication of that fraudulent letter that was signed by 51 former intel officers on the Hunter Biden laptop? Remember, it was rushed in just over 5 hours before that presidential debate.
Yeah, it's important that this came out at the same time as this Comer report. Documents like this have to be submitted for a pre-publication classification review by the CIA. It was rushed out in 5.5 hours. But what's worse, it seems that one of the officers that cleared it actually recruited additional signers. We also found out that 26 of the 36 intelligence officers asked to sign it, refused to do so. The Washington Post and AP refused to run it. And when Stanford University was asked to promote this letter, they refused because they said it was too political. This is a political effort to meddle in the 2020 election by intelligence officers. We need more investigation of this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a lot like election interference. Make sure the big guy gets elected president in 2020, Fred. Amir, good to see you this morning. Yesterday, I was kind of paying attention to the language that Comer and others were using. The Oversight Committee talking about at least $10 million that they've found going directly to 9 Biden family members. Comer never said criminal. He said not ethical many times. Is there a legal case to be made here? Do you think we could see down the line, as this investigation continues, indictments?
Yeah, I think down the line you can. And the reason why Comer can't say that is because his committee is not a criminal investigatory committee. His committee's actual purpose under the law is to promote legislation. So he's going to be talking about the legislative purpose and the oversight need and what kind of possible bills could be introduced to make sure that there isn't this kind of graft going on. And so, but the evidence that they do get can get turned over to the Department of Justice. Don't expect Merrick Garland to do anything with this, of course. But if the administration changes and it becomes a Republican administration, then I think we definitely may see or will see more investigations and indictments handed up.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? Would the AG do anything with it? Craig, Congressman Jim Jordan questioning the White House's response to the investigation. Take a listen.
Be straight with us. Why not come clean? Why not tell us the truth? Tell the American people the truth. They deserve that from their government. Again, the fundamental question is, what did they do to warrant the receipt of millions and millions of dollars? Why did Joe Biden's brother? Why did Joe Biden's sister-in-law? Why did Joe Biden's son? Why did so many family members get the money? What did they do to warrant receipt of that money? That's the fundamental question.
Craig, if you don't have anything to hide, just come out and say, this is why we got the money. Do you think we will find out?
Allison, we will find out eventually. But remember, the first rule of the bureaucracy is to defend the bureaucracy. The Biden family is a bureaucracy, just as the Biden White House, just as the Democratic Party. They are furiously circling the wagons right now, figuring out how to get back on offense and not just taking incoming right now. But I don't foresee anything of note coming from them. It's just going to be a long, slow process, Chinese torture process, drip, 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 and it will lead to where nobody knows. But I have heard the word impeachment increasingly used in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, interesting. It was reporters that took Nixon down in the early 1970s, and to your point, Craig, took 2.5 years. This is establishment Washington looking at the president right now. This is Congress looking at the president. There's a big difference between what we're seeing now and Watergate almost 50 years ago. All right, Craig, Amir, Fred, good to see you. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. We'll keep a close eye on this story as Comer continues his investigation.
Southern border, take a listen.
I cannot overemphasize that our current situation is the outcome of Congress leaving a broken, outdated immigration system in place for over 2 decades, despite unanimous agreement that we desperately need legislative reform. It is also the result of Congress's decision not to provide us with the resources we need.
Congressman, we continue to hear this from the administration, yet you're set to vote on a border security bill later today, but President Biden, without even seeing it, says, yeah, I'm gonna veto it. Is the blame rightfully placed?
I tell you what, this administration, I call BS on all that. Secretary Mayorkas is the biggest liar since Pinocchio. Might as well call him Secretary Mayorkio. He has lied from the very beginning. With a wink and a nod, this president has welcomed more than 6 million illegal aliens into our sovereign nation. They lie about what they're doing down there. They lie about reins on horses being whips. They just lied Monday from the White House that illegal immigration is down 90% since Biden took office. What planet are they living on? It's not reality. Today, at this very moment, there are more than 1 million people amassed at our border or just south of there, ready to come in because of the lies that this administration has perpetrated. We've got to finish the wall, and this border security